Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy, the beginning of a whole new series. This is the Serpent Power, Part 1, in which we will begin reading The Serpent Power by Arthur Avalon. And whenever we have a new series on chicken philosophy, there's always some new folks. Hello to the new folks. I'm Edward Reib. Some of you might even be looking at me and thinking, this guy looks familiar. It's probably because I was your yoga teacher at Crunch Fitness in Hollywood on Sunset, or in Burbank, or KLG Spa and Sauna in Koreatown, or Charak Yoga, perhaps, in Kathmandu, Nepal, or Stadium Fitness, of course, in Pasadena. You may have even had my app on your phone at one time, the Edward Reib app, to check my schedule and book private appointments and all that good stuff. And you might have wondered, whatever happened to that guy? Well, I went to India and never came back. So, yeah, here we are. Lately, what I've been up to is doing a deep dive into the history of the westernization of yoga. To be aware of it, not necessarily to condemn it, but just to be aware of it and to be able to kind of start to be able to differentiate between, authentic ancient yoga and more recent hatha yoga and different forms. And there's been a little bit of a back and forth, I've learned, so basically the story goes that Carl Jung, back in 1926 or 1927, read this book translated by Sir John Woodruff, or Woodhoff. I don't have my glasses on yet. I wear glasses now. That's new. Relatively speaking. Yeah, Woodruff. Sir John Woodruff. His pen name is Arthur Avalon. So Carl Jung read this book, and then he gave a lecture over a period of days to the Psychological Club, which he and his wife had founded in Zurich, Switzerland, and basically summed it up in his own words and with his own ideas, sort of grafted upon it, and that became the basic foundation for the Western concept of yoga as it was introduced in the 20th century, and as it echoes forward into the 21st century, and the form that you'll usually find it, forms, I should say, that you'll usually find it at your local yoga studio. And so to prepare for this, we spent 2 years, 3 years, 2.5 years reading Carl Jung's black books, which were his private journals of the sort of metaphysical, sort of spiritual, you might say, work that he was doing. He was sort of doing a self-hypnosis thing and talking to various beings from history, and his soul personified as a sort of motherly character who was part serpent. It's very interesting stuff. If you're interested in that, it's here on this same channel. There were 108 episodes, kind of an auspicious number of episodes for that. And we just finished it. And now that we've finished it, then we can say that we maybe to some degree can see where his head was at when he read this. You can see where, it shows from 1913-14 up through 1926 and 27 up until 1932, where he was diving into I Ching and more things like that. But at a certain point, you can point to in his black books and say that was where he read this and gave this lecture and had his, one of many big impacts on the collective consciousness, you might say. He was famous for coining the term collective unconscious. But anyhow, that too. I tend to think of Carl Jung as an archetype himself within the collective unconscious. So yeah, that's what's more or less going on here. There's a chicken wheel you might have noticed at the beginning of this. It said Avalon and Edward. I'm Edward, and this is Arthur Avalon. So that's what's going on. That's also why the thumbnail is this cover but black, because this is the black petal, because it was the black books originally. So here's the link to the black petal. That'll start with an introduction to the Carl Jung series, followed by the 108 episodes of the Carl Jung series, and then it'll eventually lead to the Serpent Power series. This also has its own playlist, which is right here. So this is the beginning of that. So it's pointless at this point to click that, because you're already here at episode 1. So, okay. So if anyone from Yoga Alliance is watching, I am not teaching this. This is an academic, mutual discovery. I'm learning about this mostly for the sake of understanding. Again, I've already explained. But yeah, it is not my intention to be teaching anything like tantric yoga or any of that stuff, using my name or my certification in that context. So I hope that I'm in the clear as far as that goes. But with that in mind, since this is, from what I understand, I haven't opened the book yet, so I don't peek ahead. So it's a little like the reaction channel formula, where, people who are ignorant of what they're watching, they haven't seen Rick and Morty, and they're watching it for the first time, and they go, oh, who's this guy? What's his hair doing? Why is he burping? So they're seeing it for the first time. I'm reading this for the first time, but my understanding is it is a translation of something from the 1500s, I'm guessing. I think I've heard 15th century, 16th century, a particular document which talks about things that have become very familiar, the 7 chakras, and the kundalini and all of this kind of thing. And it's very thick, so I imagine it's going to go in depth. But since and just as an interesting side note, after Carl Jung read this, then he gave that lecture. That lecture was later published and called The Psychology of Kundalini Yoga, and of course, we know we can guess that a certain Yogi Bhajan, might have seen the title and thought, that's an interesting name for a. Well, anyway, I won't. He says it's thousands of years old, so I won't contradict what they say. But anyway, and I don't want to get in trouble with those guys. I do enjoy the music that comes from the devotees of that path. And here we have the Sikhs that don't have a guru. It's forbidden, actually, to have a guru. After the 10th guru, the book is the guru. So, people who come along from that tradition and say that they're a guru are, by definition, starting a new thing. We'll just put it that way. So, given that there might be some folks that are new to yoga or who are only familiar with, yoga classes, stretching and that kind of thing on a surface level, maybe they've taken a class or maybe not. Maybe they have a sister or cousin or friend or coworker who talks about their yoga class. And so I thought it would be responsible of me to read just a page, perhaps, a page or two of this at the beginning of each of these episodes. So this is 4 chapters on freedom. Oh, by the way, my original teacher certification, I also went to Mysuru here in India and went through the 500-hour at Yoga Darshanam, but didn't finish it because COVID happened and it was a whole thing. But yeah, the funny thing I noticed there was on the first day, the guru was quoting Carl Jung. So I mentioned earlier about a certain back and forth. So there was a little bit of a call and response thing that resulted in modern yoga, both here and there. By here, I mean India, and there, I mean wherever you're watching this from. Maybe you're watching this from India. Hi. So yeah, it's all in all, it's an effort to get to know more deeply, and more subtly the yoga that may have existed before in the 1920s, before Ashtanga Vinyasa, for instance, and that kind of thing. Obviously, there's more than one lineage. Even back then, there's many, but there were people that had different numbers of chakras, for instance. This originally was one of my teachers had said that talking in terms of the 7 chakras, and I was talking about how in the 8th century in Buddhism, they worked with 5 chakras, and she was saying, well, no, there's 7. I'm not talking about a theory, I'm talking about reality. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So because Carl Jung read this particular text, well, anyway, I won't speculate too much about alternate histories, but yeah. So I'm going to read. This is from the. Oh yeah, the reason I brought that up is my original certification was through a school called Mukti Yoga. This is on my website. You can check out my website by going here, edwardreeb.com, and then scroll down to where it says yoga. Yeah, the founder, Julie Rader, spent a number of years in Bihar working with the Bihar School of Yoga. Bihar is, of course, where Lord Buddha was, not where he was born, of course. Famously, he was born in Lumbini, Nepal. But most of his life, he was wandering, at least in the books that are behind me, the Tipitaka. He was wandering in Bihar, what is presently known as the state of Bihar, India. That's also where Mahavir or Mahavira, if you pronounce the A. Usually they don't pronounce the A at the ends of things here, of Sanskrit things here. What am I talking about? Yeah, Jainism and, a lot of things, a lot of the ascetic paths of old, especially in the 6th century before Common Era, were based out of the same place that this school is based in today. And that was where she got her training, and then she started the school where I got my training initially. So this is kind of part of my lineage, you might say. And this is their translation of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which are 2,200-ish years old. And, as they say, he wasn't inventing yoga. He was, putting it into words, and then somebody wrote it down. That was a century where a lot of things were being written down in Sanskrit. And so this was among them. So I'll just go ahead and jump into it. This book is called 4 Chapters on Freedom. But it is the 4 chapters of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So it starts out here. And pardon my pronunciation. Actually, I'll just have someone else say it.
Atha yoganushasanam.
Okay, so that literally means atha is now, therefore. Yoga is unity, but we can just call it yoga because we know what we mean, right? Anusasanam, complete instructions. Translated into English more clearly, now therefore complete instructions regarding yoga. And then this is how they explain each word. Atha, we shall pause and try to find out why the author has used the word atha. He could have used atra, yoga nushasanam, which means here are the instructions on yoga, but he used the word atha. Atha means now therefore, which means that these instructions on yoga are in connection with some previous instructions. The word atha is used here to denote that after having purified oneself by karma yoga, and after doing good things, karma means action, after having unified the mental tendencies by bhakti yoga, which is devotion, opening your heart to something greater than yourself, you might say, just to keep it general, the aspirant is being given instructions on yoga. By this, it is meant that those instructions on yoga which follow will become intelligible, fruitful, and also palatable to those whose hearts are pure and whose minds are at rest, otherwise not. Those who have impure minds and wavering tendencies will not be able to practice what has been instructed in this Shastra. Therefore, the word atha has been used in order to emphasize the necessity of qualifying oneself in karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and other preparatory systems. That's an interesting way of looking at it, I would say. Okay, yoga means, the meaning of yoga follows in a subsequent sutra. They're going to talk about it later. Anushasanam. The actual word is shasanam. Anu being a prefix to emphasize its completeness. Shasan is a word which means giving a ruling, command, order, instruction. The word shastra is developed from the word shasan. Shastra does not literally mean scripture. Shastra literally means a process of instructions and rulings. From the same word, another word has evolved, Ishwara. meaning ruler. Priyal, my wife, and I were married in a temple of Ishwara. Here's some pictures of that. Okay. You can wish me happy anniversary on February 21st. It was 2019. Anyway, okay, meaning ruler, Ishwara meaning ruler, governor, commander, and which is commonly used for God. So you will understand that Anushasanam means instructions. You may have read other commentaries on the Yoga Sutras where the word Anushasanam is translated as restatement, exposition, explanation. If you analyze the word properly, you will find that the translations are totally incorrect. They are not at all appropriate to the text because the Yoga Sutras themselves are so simple, so concise, so short-worded that they can be neither an explanation nor an exposition. They can only be instructions. Yoga is this. This is how you practice yoga. These are the conditions of mind. This is how the individual experiments. This is the place of God in yoga. Such and other similar matters are dealt with in this book. They are, of course, expositions, short notes, explanations, commentaries, criticisms, etc. on yoga by great scholars like Vyasa, Bhoja, Vijnana, Bhiksu, and others. So ultimately, we can take it that the word Anushasanam means complete instructions. So there you go. That was verse 1 of chapter 1 of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And here on Chicken Philosophy, for those who are new, we always have a beverage and an incense, so water and fire. Today's beverage is some clean filtered water in a glass bottle. Say no to microplastics, after all. Cheers. Be careful if you bring a glass bottle to your yoga class, of course. Make sure you don't knock it over and broken glass everywhere. This incense is very, very lovely. It's cedar wood incense. It's Japanese temple meditation incense. And so that's what that will be the scent today. All right. So if you have your own, feel free to, okay. Put that right there. And now we can officially begin. By the way, here on Chicken Philosophy, we read a number of books. It started out with just Carl Jung for the sake of eventually leading toward the Serpent Power, but over time, we ended up reading a number of other things, and we're currently reading 5 books on rotation. So this is the first of a cycle of 15. So wherever you see blue, that means I'm reading. I'm Edward, of course. And wherever you see black, as in these 3 rows, or this row, is where we're going to be reading the Serpent Power. We're also reading Nag Hammadi, which is ancient Christian forbidden scriptures, though we've kind of branched out into a few other things. We're currently reading the Acts of Thomas in India, so that's a little bit on theme if you're interested in that sort of thing. We're also reading the Divine Pymander and other writings of Hermes Trismegistus on the orange petal, and I Ching, the Richard Wilhelm translation, which, as I mentioned, he and Carl Jung were friends, and so there's a Carl Jung connection there, and that's actually kind of lent some insight. Carl Jung's long introduction to The Secret of the Golden Flower, which we also read on the white petal. It lent a lot of insight and perspective into where Carl Jung's head was at least in 1930, 1931, when he was approaching, ancient Chinese traditions. So, later on when we're reading his book report on this book, then it will help inform that. And we're also reading the Meccan revelations of Ibn al-Arabi as much as we can in the 2-volume translation that came out in 2002. There's another translation that they're translating the entire thing into English, but they've translated 7 of the 19 volumes that are going to be coming out. And but yeah, we're getting a good overview. He was a huge influence in Sufism. So yeah. By the way, if you should be interested in one day doing lotus pose, I would recommend starting with this video right here. It's what I did when this was the first thing that I started doing, because when I read the Shobogenzo of Ehe Dogen, he was a stickler for sitting in lotus position in meditation, and I wanted to meditate in a way that would please the old Japanese Zen master of the 13th century. So that was what made me get into asana yoga to begin with, and eventually become a yoga teacher. So, but I'm going to go ahead and shift into Sukhasana, meaning easy pose, something like this. Anyway. All right. So let us, actually, I'm not 100%, I'm hesitating because I'm thinking, is this Sukhasana or is this Sukhasana? But whatever this is what I'm going to be doing. Okay. So yeah, since this is going to be what we're going to be reading for who knows how many episodes, I'm going to go ahead and start at the very beginning. The Serpent Power being the Sat Chakra Nirupana and Paduka Pankaka. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but that's two texts. Two works on Laya Yoga, translated from the Sanskrit with introduction and commentary by Arthur Avalon, Sir John Woodruff, Dover Publications Incorporated, New York. Okay. Publisher's note on the 6th edition. This was 1958, was the 5th edition. The growing interest evinced by the public to understand rightly the literature of Tantra Shastra, and more especially the yoga of Kundalini Shakti, has encouraged us to bring out this new edition of almost unique original work on the subject. All right. The opportunity has been availed of to add a transliteration of all the Sanskrit verses and provide indexes in English for half verses, authors, citations, words, etc. June 1985. Rest assured, I will not be reading out all the Sanskrit, but maybe that's why the book is so thick. I'll try to stick to the English rather than butchering, with horrible pronunciation. Publisher's note to the 5th edition. Within the last 3 years, most of the works of Sir John Woodruff have been published by us after they had been out of print for nearly 20 years. It is gratifying... Okay. So nearly 1933, shortly after 1933, they stopped publishing it. All right. I imagine there was less interest once the Depression really got going. Maybe it was a 20s thing that people were getting interested in this. Just speculating. It is gratifying to note that the public have appreciated the valuable nature of these books and their new uniform get-up. The last edition of Serpent Power was exactly the same as its predecessor, but in the present one, to make reference to the Sanskrit portion easier and more convenient to critical students, indexes have been included for the verses, authors, citations, bibliography, and important works at the end of the book. Okay. It is hoped that these editions would prove useful to at least some of the readers. November 1953. Preface to 3rd edition. This edition, to which some additions have been made and in which some errors have been corrected, has been revised throughout. I would have liked to read the edition that Carl himself read, since that's basically the point of this. Since the issue of the 2nd edition, several new volumes have appeared in this series of tantric texts. In connection with this book, the reader is specifically referred to the Kamakala Vilasa, one of such texts, as also to the essay on creation in the Tantras, which with other new material is printed in Shakti and Shakta. The publishers have published a volume called Mahamaya by Professor Pramata Nata Mukhopadhyaya and myself, presumably Arthur Avalon, in which comparison is made of the concept of Maya as held by the Shaktas and Mayavadins respectively. I repeat that it is not possible to understand this yoga without having first been first well grounded in its philosophy. I say understand only because the question of the reality and the value of its form of yoga is not one with which this book is concerned. Since the publication of the second edition, there has been issued a monograph on the chakras by the well-known theosophist, the Right Reverend C.W. Ledbetter, which includes matter published by him in 1910. The volume contains plates of the chakras as said to have been seen clairvoyantly, as also a plate of the chakras according to Johann Georg Gichtel. My German is worse than my Sanskrit. A pupil of Jacob Boehm, taken from his Theosophia Practica, originally issued in 1696 and reprinted in 1897. And then there's parentheses about that particular edition and its publication, which I'm going to skip rather than, not that. Dr. Rele has also published a book entitled The Mysterious Kundalini, parentheses, Tarapora Wala Bombay, end parentheses, these days Mumbai, to which I have written an introduction. Okay. Arthur Avalon, Oxford, September 11th, 1928. No relation. I added no relation. No relation to the other September 11th. Okay. More prefaces. That's fine. That's fine. We're here for the prefaces. Preface to second edition. Considering the recondite nature of the subject, the first edition published by Messrs. Luzac and Company, London, has had a more rapid sale than was expected, and a call for a second edition has enabled me to revise the whole work. Again, I would have liked to read the one Carl read, and to make several corrections and additions both in the introduction and the text. To this second edition has been added the Sanskrit text of the works here translated, which formerly appeared as Volume 2 of the Tantric texts, and which has since gone out of print. This edition also contains, in addition to the original colored plates of the chakras, a number of half-tone plates taken from life, showing some positions in Kundalini Yoga. Okay. The introduction deals in a general way with the subject matter of the texts translated. I take, however, this opportunity to say again that it has not been possible to give here a full explanation of such matters, and refer my reader to my other works dealing with the Tantras and their ritual, namely Principles of Tantra, a work of peculiar value in that it is a translation of the work of a Bengali Pandit, himself a Shakta, unacquainted with the English language, but an inheritor of the old traditions. A Pandit is like a priest, and if it sounds similar to the English word pundit, that's because Pandit is the origin of the English word pundit. On account of, basically, my understanding is when the Portuguese came, and certain church, people, Jesuits and what have you, were sitting down with the pundits and learning Sanskrit and starting to develop what would later become the idea of Proto-Indo-European languages and as the common ancestor of Sanskrit and, English, as well as many other languages. So the Pandit was a very useful person with a specific kind of knowledge that they were able to get information from, which is how the word got imported into English. A pundit is a person with a specific kind of knowledge, but a pandit is a priest, like a Brahmin, basically. Himself a Shakta, unacquainted with the English language, but an inheritor of the old traditions, as also my Shakti and Shakta dealing with ritual, published since the date of my first preface. The studies in Mantra Shastra referred to therein has also recently been published under the title of Garland of Letters. All such technical terms as Bindu, Nada, and the like used in the works translated have been fully explained therein, as also the general principles of mantra. It is necessary also to know with accuracy the exact meaning of the terms consciousness, mind, life, matter, and so forth as used in Vedanta, and these have been given in the series of little works under the general caption, The World as Power. I'm butchering the name, Advaita Vedanta. One of the core texts of that is Ashtavakra Gita, which one of the translations is called The Heart of Awareness, and we read that here on Chicken Philosophy a few years back. That's the link there if you want to hear that recital. Okay, it is not possible to understand the rationale of yoga without an accurate understanding of these fundamental terms. It has been rightly said that, quote, the practical portion of all yoga, especially of Raja Yoga, is concerned with mental practices. It is therefore absolutely necessary that the student of yoga should know what his mind is and how it works. End quote. That's a quote from Raja Yoga by Swami Dayanand. I have given a short account of Sarvananda and his life in the Hindustan Review. Other works by me on the Shastra are noted in the advertisement sheet at the end of the book. Les Angeles Ure, October 1922, Arthur Avalon. Okay, so I think we're done with the prefaces to the various editions. Now we've arrived at the preface itself. We're getting there. One day we'll actually be reading the book. Okay, so this is a quote. Quote, we pray to the Paradeva... Okay, this is a quote from Sharada Tilaka. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. 3570. So it's something. Okay, quote. We pray to the Paradevata united with Shiva, whose substance is the pure nectar of bliss, red like unto vermilion, the young flower of the hibiscus, and the sunset sky, who, having cleft her way through the mass of sound issuing from the clashing and the dashing of the two winds in the midst of Susumna, rises to that brilliant energy which glitters with the luster of 10 million lightnings. May she, Kundalini, who quickly goes to and returns from Shiva, grant us the fruit of yoga. She, being awakened, is the cow of plenty to Kaulas, and the Kalpa creeper of all things desired for those who worship her. End quote. Okay. In my work, now this is Arthur talking, in my work, Shakti and Shakta, I outlined for the first time the principles of Kundalini Yoga. Not to brag, but I don't know. Okay. So maybe it means he outlined it for the first time? No, I think it means it was outlined for the first time. In English, perhaps. Perhaps not. I don't know what he means here. So much discussed in some quarters, but of which so little was known. This work is a description and explanation in fuller detail of the Serpent Power, Kundalini Shakti, in parentheses. Okay. Yeah, Shakti, power. Okay, here's a fun image. So that word Shakti you'll find here in India, used more generally, not just in the context of Tantra and whatnot. But yeah, so you'll often see, here's a statue of Shiva and the Shakti, or sometimes you'll see the Buddha and the Shakti. There was in Vajrayana Buddhism, they brought in Tantra into Mahayana Buddhism, and it developed into Vajrayana Buddhism, which was then introduced into Tibet, as well as, in one example at least, in Japan. So there was a man from Nepal who runs a shop in Darjeeling, West Bengal, India, and he had a statue of Buddha with Shakti in the display window, and a Theravadan Buddhist layperson saw it and sued him, and he had to go to court and explain to the judge the history of Buddhism and how from his vantage point, that's sacred, that this is an evolution on Buddhism that he may consider profane, but it's sort of like it's a crude example, but it's like a Jewish person suing somebody for, having a statue of Jesus or something. That's not exactly a one-to-one, but it's kind of vaguely similar. the religion evolved over time, and there's many forms of it, basically. If you're interested in that, there's the sister channel to Chicken Philosophy, which is actually the original channel, and Chicken Philosophy was created as to supplement the things that we weren't already covering on Buddhist Books Podcast. Actually, where I'm sitting now is normally where we film Buddhist Books Podcast, and we're moving from one part of Goa to another right now. And so in the last episode, the most recent episode of Chicken Philosophy, I took out the, Frater BT, that's actually me just wearing different clothes. Frater BT took out all the books from the bookshelf, so I thought, hey, why not? I'm going to be filming one more Buddhist Books episode tomorrow before I pack these books. So I thought, why not film this here? And okay. I got sidetracked by Kundalini Shakti, or Serpent Power. He said the thing. And the yoga affected through it. A subject occupying a preeminent place in the Tantra Shastra. It consists of a translation of 2 Sanskrit works published some years ago in the 2nd volume of my series of tantric texts, but hitherto untranslated. The first, entitled Satchakra Nirupana, in parentheses, description of and investigation into the 6 bodily centers, right, not counting the 7th one that's above the body, I assume, has as its author the celebrated tantric Purnananda Swami, a short note on whose life is given later. It forms the sixth chapter of his extensive and unpublished work on tantric ritual entitled Sri Tattva Sintamani. This has been the subject of commentaries by, among others, Samkara and Visvanatha, cited in Volume 2 of the tantric texts and used in the making of the present translation. The commentary here translated from the Sanskrit is by Kali Karana. The second text, called Paduka Pankaka, again with the not 100% sure with the pronunciation, meaning 5-fold footstool of the guru, deals with one of the lotuses described in the larger work. To it is appended a translation from the Sanskrit of a commentary by Kali Karana. To the translation of both works, I have added some further explanatory notes of my own. As the works translated are of a highly recondite character and by themselves unintelligible to the English reader, I have prefaced the translation by a general introduction in which I have endeavored to give, parentheses, within the limits both of a work of this kind and my knowledge, end parentheses, a description and explanation of this form of yoga. I have also included some plates of the centers which have been drawn and painted according to the description of them as given in the first of these Sanskrit texts. Okay, all right. We'll finish the preface. We'll finish the preface today. It has not been possible in the introduction to do more than give a general and summary statement of the principles upon which yoga and this particular form of it rests. Those who wish to pursue the subject in greater detail are referred to my other published works on the Tantra Shastra. In Principles of Tantra will be found general introductions to the Shastra and, in connection with the present subject, valuable chapters on Shakti and mantras. In my recent work, Shakti and Shakta, the second edition of which is, as I write, reprinting, I have shortly summarized the teachings of the Shakta Tantras and their rituals. In my studies in the Mantra Shastras, the first 3 parts of which have been reprinted from the Vedanta Kesari, in which they first appeared, will be found more detailed descriptions of such technical terms as tattva, causal shaktis, kala, nada, bindu, and so forth, which are referred to in the present book. Other works published by me on the Tantra, including the Wave of Bliss, will be found in the page of advertisements, or I feel like because he's British, the page of his advertisements. The following account of Purnananda, right? Purnananda, there we go. the celebrated Tantrika Sadaka of Bengal, and author of the Sat Chakra Nirupani, has been collected from the descendants of his eldest son, two of whom are connected with the work of the Virendra Research Society, Raj Shahi, to whose director, S.J. Aksaya Kumara Maitra, and secretary, Radha Govinda Baisak, I am indebted for the following details. Purnananda was a Rahri Brahmana of the Kasyapa Gotra, whose ancestors belonged to the village of Pakrashi, which has not as yet been identified. His seventh ancestor, Anantakarya, or Charya, not sure, is said to have migrated from Baranagora in the district of Murshidabad to Kaitali in the district of Mymensingh. In his family were born two celebrated Tantrika Sadakas, namely Sarvananda and Purnananda. Descendants of Sarvananda reside at Mehar, while those of Purnananda reside mostly in the district of Mymensingh. Little is known about the worldly life of Purnananda except that he bore the name of Jagadananda and copied a manuscript of the Vishnu Puranam in the Shaka year 1448, which corresponds to, in Common Era, 1526. This manuscript, now in the possession of one of his descendants, named Pandit Hari Kishore, now meaning in the 1920s, right? Hari Kishore Bhattacharya of Kaitali is still in a fair state of preservation. It was brought for inspection by Pandit Satis Kandra Siddhatabhusana of the Virendra Research Society. The colophon states that Jagadananda Sharma wrote the Purana in the Saka year 1448, again 1526. This Jagadananda assumed the name of Purnananda when he obtained his Diksha, or initiation, from Brahmananda and went to Kamarupa, Assam, okay, that's a state these days, in which province he is believed to have attained his siddhi, or state of spiritual perfection, okay. I've heard the word siddhi used in different contexts. That this is, I guess, one of them. Occult powers like levitation and telepathy and things like that are considered siddhis, but in this context it seems to be different. Or state of spiritual perfection in the ashrama. Is that the same as ashram? Which still goes by the name of Vasistasrama, situated at a distance of about 7 miles from the town Gauhati, Assam. Purnananda never returned home, but led the life of a Paramahamsa, as in Paramahansa Yogananda, okay, and compiled several tantric works, of which the Sri Tattva Sintamani, composed in the Shaka year 1499, Common Era year 1577, Syamarahasya, Sakta Krama, and Tattvananda Tarangini and Yogasara are known. His commentary on the Kali Kakarakuta hymn, or mantra, is well known. The Shat Chakra Nirupana, here translated, is not, however, an independent work, but a part of the 6th Patala of the Sri Tattva Sintamani. In Buddhist Books podcast recently, we noticed that the word mantra gets translated as hymn, but they have two very different connotations. You think hymn, you think a bunch of people, echoing off the... Anyway, mantra again. we're all here, right? You know what I'm saying. The Sat Chakra Nirupana, here translated, is not, however, an independent work, but part of the sixth Patala of the Sri Tattva Sintamani. According to a general genealogical table of the family of this Tantrika Akarya and Virakarya Sadhaka, given by one of his descendants, Puranananda is removed from his present descendants by about 10 generations. This work has been on hand for some 5 years, but both the difficulties of the subject and those created by the war, which war? September 20th, 1918, okay, that war, have delayed its publication. I had hoped to include some other plates of original paintings and drawings in my possession bearing on the subject, but present conditions do not allow of this, and I have therefore thought it better to publish the book as it stands, rather than risk further delay. Arthur Avalon, Ranchi, September 20th, 1918. Okay, 1918. And the final edition, talking about, wow, we've made so many new additions to this, and this is the 6th edition, that was 1958. So this is very old, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who would be very quick to say, hey, don't read this old crap. This is much better, much more informative, much, thing over here. And I'm sure there are many. But as I said before, I'm following a very specific thread. I am reading this specific book that Carl Jung read when he gave his lecture, which laid the baseline foundation, understanding or perhaps misunderstanding, or semi-understanding, semi-misunderstanding. The Carlization. A friend of mine, Joe Zabinski, who I co-host a podcast with called Esoteric Nerd Podcast, put it that it's a form of yoga that he helped to bring into the world, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or evil or bad. I know that there are a few people who would tend to think of anything that has been touched by Western hands or minds as being somehow tainted or polluted. And it's kind of with that in mind. I mean, on one hand, I don't necessarily agree with that, but on the other hand, I kind of am willing to hear that out, and with that in mind, I'm following this specific thread on behalf of anyone who might find it useful in the future or in the present, following the specific thread of getting inside Carl Jung's head by way of the Black Books and then reading this. But at the same time, there are other things to be gained from reading the Black Books, and surely there are other things to be gained from reading this. But the reason why I'm reading this old British guy talking, kind of bragging about, well, I've already written about this. Oh, you must have not read my earlier publications, and okay, well, there's been hundreds of thousands, if not more, people who've written about these subjects since these days, but he's writing in a time where he's like, yes, I am the sole, person who has transmitted these ideas to the West from India. And, of course, this was during the British occupation period. 1918 was 30 years before Indian independence. And with all of this context in mind, reading this old, more than 100 years ago, British guy introducing these concepts to the English-speaking world. For the sake of just that, specifically, that one specific thing, of looking at the history of it, learning the information, sure, getting the translation, maybe not the best translation, but historically the translation that was given at that time. There's a similar thing with some of the things that we read on the Orange Petal, where we're reading, William Westcott's translation of certain things that perhaps have been better translated since then, but we're reading them because that's the version that they read in the 1880s. And there's certain folks in the 1880s whose heads we are looking inside, or whose eyes we're looking through, just to kind of get not doing the Watchmen HBO thing. There is not anywhere in my intention. Never mind. If you know what I'm talking about, then you do. But if not, then I'm just rambling. Okay. All right. I hope that you enjoyed, episode 1, part 1 of the Serpent Power here on Chicken Philosophy. I hope you stick around and check out part 2. And feel free, if you're interested in checking out some of the other series here on Chicken Philosophy, you can you can hit subscribe below. Be sure to hit like. And, check out the Chicken Philosophy channel. There's a whole bunch of stuff there on the main channel page. There's sort of an interestingly organized menu to get an idea of the flow. Each of these cycles of 15 has a name. Today is the beginning of a cycle that has no name as of yet. Sometimes we name it in advance, and sometimes we don't. So at a certain point, I'll be announcing what the name is. And until then, it's just the current cycle of 15. The previous cycles of 15 are there on the main page. You can check those out. And the color combinations themselves, there's compilations where, there's 40 episodes or 24 episodes, depending on what the color combination is, condensed into 6 minutes or half an hour, depending on whether we decided to go with quick and funny or a little bit longer and more thoughtful for that particular color combination. If you explore, you'll discover a lot of interesting things. There's also compilations of each of the cycles of 15, where we take clips from each of the personas, reading each of the books, and put them all back to back. Again, sometimes short and funny, sometimes a bit longer and a little more thoughtful, but sometimes funny, a little bit now and then. And okay, I guess that's it. And I hope you enjoyed yourself today. And it's going to be at least, what day is it today? I think it's the 14th. So it's going to be at least 10 days. It won't be until minimum the 25th. That's the earliest possible day that another episode of Chicken Philosophy will come out, because the books that I read on Chicken Philosophy are all packed in boxes, and the movers are going to come on the 24th. So that gives us a nice, comfortable amount of time. I have a lot of statues, Hindu and Buddhist and other statues, to put in bubble wrap and, very, very nicely transport to the new place, and other things. Okay. Again, hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you stick around for those who are new, and for those who aren't new, welcome back. And I hope you stick around too. And all right, I'm stalling. I don't want to end the episode, but it's time. It's time to end the episode. Feel free to check out. I'm sure that you're not all caught up on everything, because how could you possibly be caught up on everything? You have a life. You can't just sit here watching Chicken Philosophy all day. But if you want to, there's plenty of other episodes of other. I'll go ahead and close now. All right. Until next time.